I never thought a shoe would change my entire life. I was bending down to unplug the vacuum when my sister's heel slammed into my face so hard it knocked me sideways. Blood filled my mouth, my cheek cracked, and I dropped to the carpet. But what happened in the next few minutes would change the entire direction of my existence. My mother looked at me on the floor and said, "Smell it. That's what filth like you should be good for." In that moment I decided I would show them what filth could really do. I was 25 years old. 25. But in that house, I was nothing more than a human footstool. I worked 2 jobs, worked weekends, paid half the groceries, yet I was treated like I was stealing space just by waking up. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, my jaw was swollen, my gums throbbing, but I wasn't crying. I never cried anymore. I was just making a mental list of every time they'd called me worthless, dramatic, lazy, or disgusting. Every time I'd been hit and told I asked for it. Every time I traded silence for less pain. Miss Tina at the diner noticed something was wrong. She saw me folding napkins with my left hand because my right wrist was too sore. "You need help getting out?" she asked one night while we closed. I looked up startled. "Out of what?" "Out," she said simply. I laughed, but it sounded weird, like I'd forgotten how. "People like you never are fine, but you're still standing. That counts for something." She handed me a bag of food. I didn't eat it. I saved it in my mini fridge like a trophy, because someone had actually seen me that week. Then came the final moment. I walked into the living room and found my mother holding my shoes. The cheap gray ones I used for my second job. "They smell like sadness," she said, wrinkling her nose. "They smell like work," I replied flatly. She turned to Rachel. "Throw them out." Rachel smiled gladly. I took one step forward. "Don't touch my stuff." Mom's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" I didn't respond. I just picked up my shoes and walked them quietly to my room. I locked the door and sat down with them in my lap. Then I picked up my notebook that I hadn't touched in months. I turned to a blank page and wrote one sentence. "If they treat you like filth, let them learn what filth can become." That night I didn't sleep. I read everything I'd ever written in that notebook. Every insult, every injury, every moment they said I wasn't enough. By sunrise I had a plan. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was just freedom, one piece at a time. And when the time came, I wouldn't raise my voice. I'd raise the truth and let it destroy them in silence. The next morning I didn't go to the diner. I went to the local legal aid center. They offered help for women stuck in complicated home situations. "It's not physical abuse," I told the caseworker. "Not like what people imagine. I don't have broken bones today, but I can't breathe in my own house." She nodded like she'd heard it 1,000 times, because she probably had. She asked if I had any evidence. "Open my phone." I had voice recordings from the hallway, from under my bedroom door, from the night Mom called me a roach with rent and told Rachel, "Let her rot, she's not marriage material anyway." The caseworker leaned back slowly and exhaled. "You have options." "I don't want to sue," I said. "I want out, but I want them to feel it." She smiled. "Then let's get creative." By the end of the week I had a temporary P.O. box, a part-time studio rental, and a burner email address. None of it in my real name. I wasn't running. I was setting the stage. Back at the house, Mom started unraveling. Her blog, Homey with Helen, was getting fewer clicks. One of the brands she worked with quietly dropped her after an anonymous email pointed out that she regularly posted advice on gentle parenting while screaming at her adult daughter to lick the floor she walked on. The screenshots didn't lie. Rachel was busy trying to get brand deals as a lifestyle influencer. I knew she edited her photos and lied about most of her partnerships. So I did what any silent ghost would do. I created a fake influencer brand. Just a shell, a site, a form. I invited her to collaborate and asked her to submit her stats for a potential paid campaign. She sent everything. Numbers, back-end screenshots, contact lists, edited proofs of engagement. I forwarded the entire package to Instagram's business fraud department. 2 weeks later, her page was flagged, then shadow banned, then frozen for investigation. She screamed into the hallway for 2 straight hours, swearing at the Wi-Fi, at me at her phone. I was in my room packing essentials. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. One night I came home and the house was dark, dead quiet. I walked into the kitchen and found Mom sitting at the table, hair undone, phone face down. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Work." She tilted her head. "You've been different." I didn't answer. "You think you're better than this house now?" "I think I've always been better than what you saw." Her lip curled. "No matter what you do, you'll never be her." "I know," I said. "Thank God." She slapped the table. "Don't talk back to me. I gave you life." "No," I said, picking up my keys. "You gave me trauma and a closet full of apologies you never wore." "You're walking out," she said, standing. "I'm not walking," I said, heading toward the door. "I'm leaving." "There's a difference." "Where will you go?" she snapped. "To a place where shoes stay on feet and love doesn't come with a price tag. You'll regret this." I stopped in the doorway, turned, and handed her a small box. Inside were Rachel's shoes, the ones she'd kicked me with. Clean, polished, wrapped in tissue, and a note that said, "You told me to smell them. Now you can live with them." She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the shoes like they were haunted. I walked away. Outside, the air felt new, cold but sharp, like it belonged to me now. My phone buzzed. Rachel's text. "You ruined my life." I stared at it for a second, then replied, "No, I just returned the favor." And then I blocked her. The next day, I stepped into my new apartment, a tiny studio with one window and second-hand furniture. But no one kicked me here. No one screamed. No one called me filth. I took off my shoes, set them by the door, and sat down on the floor. In that silence, I smiled for the first time in years. But it wasn't over, because I still had one more thing left to do that would leave a mark that wouldn't wash off. I'd been listening to a podcast for months called Rooms Without Windows, run by survivors, real stories, people who'd lived through psychological war zones disguised as households. I sent them a message, not naming names, just telling a story about a woman whose mother once shoved her face into a shoe and said, "This is where filth belongs." About how that woman eventually cleaned the same shoe, boxed it, and gave it back like a curse. About the silence that followed. They asked to record my voice. Said yes. The episode aired 3 weeks later. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was just me speaking calmly, not sobbing, not accusing, just telling the truth. That episode went viral. People started commenting, messaging, sharing, not just sympathy but recognition. They'd heard stories like mine before. They'd lived them. Some were still living them. The comment that stayed with me the most was, "If that was my mom, I'd burn the whole house down." I replied, "I didn't need fire, just a mirror." My mother's blog was already on life support, but once someone found the podcast and linked it to her home profile, it ended. Comments poured in. "You mean the same Helen who forced her daughter to the floor? You mean the same gentle parent who said her daughter wasn't worth space? You mean the woman whose perfect daughter got banned for fraud?" Brands dropped her again. Her Facebook group with 11K members collapsed in 24 hours. Someone archived her posts and annotated them with contradictions, calling it the manual for emotional neglect disguised as grace. Rachel tried to make a comeback on TikTok, posted a video crying about anonymous jealousy and cancel culture lies, but her voice shook and her followers weren't buying it. They wanted names, proof, and more importantly, they didn't forget. That was the real win. Not that I ruined them financially, not that I exposed them, but that I erased the version of themselves they spent years selling. They could never rebuild that image. Not again, not after this. I started writing full-time personal essays, interviews, creative nonfiction, stories about girls who didn't cry when they were kicked, girls who learned to live in silence, and then turned that silence into a wrecking ball. One of my pieces got published in a print journal. I took the magazine, rolled it up, and mailed it to my mother. No letter, no message. Just my name in print on page 12 above a story titled, "The House Where I Wasn't Welcome." Weeks later I got a voicemail. Her voice was tight, bitter, still clinging to whatever pride she had left. "You're lucky we don't sue." I smiled, then deleted it. Later that month, Rachel showed up outside the bakery where I worked, hair tied back, sunglasses on like a celebrity going incognito. She didn't come in. She just stood there staring through the glass. I met her eyes. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the power had been vacuumed out of her spine. She mouthed something. I couldn't tell what. Maybe why. Maybe please. Maybe just my name. I didn't move. She walked away. And that was the last time I saw either of them. Years from now, someone will ask them why they don't talk to their daughter, or why their last name brings up old blog controversies and influencer fraud alerts. They'll dodge the question. They'll blame me. But deep down they'll know. They told me I was filth. And I believed them until I learned what filth can actually do. It clings, stains, and sometimes it becomes the only thing people remember. I taught them that silence is the most dangerous weapon when used correctly. And sometimes revenge is sweetest when it's completely silent. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Hit that notification bell for more shocking revenge stories that will leave you speechless.